This is National Injustice, Sefer Melachim Alef, chapter 21, part 3. It's actually not 21, it's really chapter 22. I'm calling it part 3 because it's part 3 of the series, not really chapter 21 anymore. So remember the last thing that we said was that somehow Achav, who was very, very angry at what had happened to him, he was very angry about the fact even that he was denied the land. Zevel conspiracy, engaged in a conspiracy. Basically, they killed a person on false charges, Navot, Israeli. So we saw when we concluded last time, that Eliyahu Hanavi is sent by Hashem to go find Achav and to say to him, Haratzachta v'gam yarashta, you murdered and you want to inherit the estate. So they have a conversation, and Achav refers to Eliyahu initially as his enemy. I'm on page 437 at the bottom, turning to page 438. And when Achav hears the punishment that is in the offing for him and for Izevel, he actually has some kind of a moment of a pang of conscience, and he's contrite. Page 438, Pasuk 27. He hears it, tears his clothing, he puts on the sackcloth, he's fasting, and he lies down in his sackcloth. V'yahalech at. He went at as likleat. He went slowly with lethargy, the sense that he felt bad about what he had done. Or he didn't do, he did do, right? There's a shell game where there's some kind of plausible deniability. We'll pretend he was not involved, or maybe he was, wink, wink, nod, nod. Someone else took care of it. There was euphemistic language being employed. And Hashem tells Eliyahu, the last thing we saw, you see how Achav is contrite? He's submissive now. So on account of that, so I will not bring all of the evil in his time, right? It'll be in his son's time. That's when his household will be completely wiped out. There'll be no dynasty left for him. And 3 years go by, and there's no war between the Jewish people, Yisrael, kingdom of Yisrael, and Aram. Today, Syria, in that vicinity. Yeah? Is that familiar? Now, if you look at the source packet, which I will grant you is probably too large for this week, but I want to try to, even if we don't get to everything, at least, wow, there's a lot of material here and a lot of food for thought. So you'll know, like, the ellipsis at the end of the class is, there's much more to see and to say, but can't get it all in time. Look at the Yalkut Shimoni. Hara'ita kinichna Achav. Do you see that Achav was contrite? Milamed shishalach v'kra Yehoshaphat melech Yehuda. This teaches us that when it means that he was contrite, not just in terms of his relationship to Hashem, but maybe directly, but maybe also in terms of his relationship to the rest of Klal Yisrael, i.e., there had been a split. Maybe it's time to make some kind of redress for the split, Malchut Yisrael and Malchut Yehuda. So what did he do? He called the king, Yehoshaphat, the righteous king, direct descendant of David HaMelech, Vayanotim lo Malchut arba'im shlosh pamim bayom. And he had Yehoshaphat, either directly or Yehoshaphat's people, give him lashes 3 times a day. He would fast. He was getting up in the morning and going to bed at night, praying, davening, supplicating, and God heard his prayer. And why? So you'll know how great was the element of tshuva. He deferred his mealtime maybe by 3 hours every day. So what is Vayihalech at? So Yeshua ben Levi says, Shahalach Yachef. He would walk around for the rest of his life barefoot, a mark of contrition. And the point here is supposed to be that it's sincere in some way. But the Medrash wants us to understand that when Achav wanted to do tshuva, he understood that really the righteous people, at least as far as leadership, were found in the Jewish nation. It was Malchut Yehuda wanted to make peace with them. Later on, Melachim Bet, Melachim Av to Melachim Bet is not really a new book, just so you know. And according to our tradition, it's just Sefer Melachim. But someone in the Middle Ages split it. 1 Kings, 2 Kings. So it's just a question of 7 days. Hold your finger on page 438. Skip to page 451 in the Koren Tanakh. We're looking at verse 18. And sometimes these things are disjointed because it goes according to theme and not always according to chronology. But we learn on page 451 a shocking reality. This person, the son of Yehoshaphat, will be Yehoram ben Yehoshaphat, Melech Yehuda, and it will describe that he's 32 when he reigns, and for 8 years he reigned in Jerusalem. Look at verse 18. Vayelech b'derech malchei Yisrael kasher asu beit Achav ki bat Achav hayta lo leisha v'yas hara be'enei Hashem. So just to understand the family tree, Achav's daughter ended up getting married to Yehoshaphat's son. They were machatonim. Now, why is he the Edom? Because they were making peace, and that's what kings do to show the peace. They intermarry, right? The aristocracy, the queen, the princess of so-and-so becomes the queen of such and such, so that the two empires are wedded to each other. Very common. Now go back to page 438, and we understand what's happening now at the beginning of chapter 22, verse 2. It's really chapter 22. I don't know why I wrote here chapter 21. It's really 22. Okay, but this is part 3 of the series. Vayihi b'shana, I'm on verse 2. Right? We don't care when we learn. We don't care about the numbers of chapters. Those were foisted upon us by Christians in the Middle Ages for the purpose of disputations to try to engage us in debates against our will. And there needed to be a system of categorization. And that's how we got to chapter 3, verse 22, or whatever you want to fill in the blank for the numbers and the chapters and verses. What we care about is the Masoretic text, which means passed on generation to generation of where paragraphing happens. Those are parshiot. That's what you see when you look at, that's what I like using the Koran Tanakh, looking at the page. So there was a little paragraph, verse 28, 29, and 1. That's a paragraph. Okay, those go together. Now, why do you care? Because the fact that 3 years went by with no war between Aram and the Jewish people seems to be related to the fact that Hashem told Eliyahu Navi, by the way, do you see how contrite Achav is? King Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, he goes down to the king of Israel. Now, literally, why did he go down? Because you're in the mountain region in Yehuda. Topographically, you go down, relatively speaking, by the way, because there are also mountain ranges in Shomron. He went down. This is already, you have a Parsha allusion right here.
Well, he was also in Yerushalayim, wasn't he? Yehoshaphat?
Yeah.
So anytime you go down, it's Yerida.
Oh, so you could say spiritually it's a Yerida from Yerushalayim. Great, great. Who in Parshat Vayeshev goes down? Well, he's brought down. Hurad Mitzrayim. But you know who goes down? Yehuda. It's going to say at the beginning of chapter 38, it was here when you hear the Parsha read this Shabbos Shul, it's going to say Yehuda went down from amongst his brothers. And the commentaries point out, not just that he went down in some physical sense from the mountain range where they lived, but also spiritually, he debased himself. Just the whole story with Yehuda and Tamar. So the king of Yehuda goes down, right? It has all these elements, the spiritual of the place, the spirituality also of going, see it. The king of Israel said to his servants, note there are 2 steps. 1, king of Yehuda went to visit the king of Israel. They had a visit with him. Was this when the children got married? Was that for the wedding? It doesn't say. He went to him. But then the king of Israel, Achav, so named as Melech Yisrael, says to his servants, we own Ramot Gilad. Where's Ramot Gilad? Look on the source packet, the map on the inset, to the right of the map, about a third of the way to the half the way down the page. That's the vicinity of Ramot Gilad, the heights of Gilad. Yeah, today we would probably call it Golan Heights. It's in that vicinity. It's not one location, it's a whole region. It's to the east of the Kinneret, in that quadrant, you could say. So why don't we take it back? Why is it still in the hands of the king of Aram? Sounds like something you would have heard from Megillat Ruth. Right? Right? Anything that happens to you is going to happen to me. So the visit is happening. The king of Israel says to his retinue, his court, in the presence of Yehoshaphat, how do you like that? We still don't have control over Ramot Gilad. Will you come with me? And what does he answer? Absolutely. We are one. We're united. We're one nation. And you see, and I'm pointing this out, and some Rabbi Alex Israel points out, Rabbi Chanan Samet points out, in a positive vein, it's really complicated, but on some level, Achav and Yehoshaphat are trying to patch things up, maybe to bring back a single unified nation, understanding that they're much more powerful under one roof as one organization, i.e., country, kingdom, than they are going to be as two separate ones. So they make an alliance. Verse 5, page 438. Welcome, page 438, verse 5. Vayomer Yehoshaphat El Melech Yisrael Drosh Nachayom et Dvar Hashem. That's the minhag. You're going out to war. Let's ask God's opinion if we should go out to war. This was very common. You see it through and through all the Nevi'im. The kings asked, not if you're not a righteous king, but Yehoshaphat is righteous. And you see how he's inching Achav along to bring him to a little process of tshuva. Again, the Medrash is describing that Achav has enlisted Yehoshaphat, whether personally or his people, to sock it to him, to be the agent of punishing him, so that he'll feel contrition, to mete out the lashes, the malchus. He deserves malchus. So this was getting. So we'll ask, Vayikbotz Melech Yisrael et Nevi'im, ki arba me'ot ish, vayomer aleihem, ha'elech al Ramot Gilad lamilchama im echdal, vayomru alei, v'yitain Adonai biyad hamelech. So he asks, there are like 400 men who are standing there as prophets. He's gathered them, and he says, should I go to Ramot Gilad, to these heights, to the war, or should I cease and desist? And they tell him, go up. It's going to work out fine. I'll put it in the hands of the king. Now, just to pause, the number 400 here is evocative. Aside from everybody knows, Asaph had 400 men with him. David had 400 men with him. No, there's something much more proximal, which is there are 400 Nevi'ei Habal who are on Har Carmel, just outside of Haifa. Har Carmel, in the story with Eliyahu in chapter 18. We don't have time for that now. They all get killed. And the idea that there's 400 Nevi'im, they're standing strong, like who are these people? I thought they all died. It's as if fire came down from heaven and incinerated them. So what are you talking about over here with the this group? Nevi'ei Baal, there was I think 400. It wasn't 400, 450. So now it's 400. I mean, some large number. You can imagine them standing in rows, of 100 apiece. Big group, and they all say this like in unison, like as a chorus. But Yehoshaphat has a strange answer. V'yom Yehoshaphat ha'ein po navi l'Hashem od v'nidrasha me'oto. Is there no other prophet to Hashem? Now, it's 400 prophets. So is there anyone else? V'yom Melech Yisrael Yehoshaphat od ish echad lidrosh Hashem me'oto v'anis neitiv k'lo yitnabe alai tov ki imra. Michayu ben Yimla, Vayomer Yehoshaphat al Yomar Melech Cain. You understand what just happened? Let me say it in our language. I don't like that person. I don't like that rabbi. He doesn't deliver the good news. He's not inspirational. He tells me things I don't want to hear. There will be a person later on in Jewish history who will, according to some, be called in quotation marks, a rabbi, in quotation marks, a prophet, right? Who will come to bring the good news to the world. Judaism stands opposed to that idea. Achav, he stood for that idea. Prophets should be about good news. They tell me what I want to hear.
Why didn't you call Eliyahu?
Couldn't find him. Couldn't find him. Eliyahu was in and out, and he just couldn't find the guy. Now, where's this Michael ben Yimla? He's the person who, at the end of chapter 20, left the king very, very angry. Went home pouting. Why? Because there was a Navi named Michia, this guy, they didn't name him there, Michael ben Yimla, who told him, you let go the king of Aram? You are going to get punished for this. Do you know how many Jews he killed? And you decided the aristocracy hangs together, right, and you granted him clemency. You didn't ask anyone's opinion, and you just followed suit. Right? You had more Rahmanas on him than you have on your own people. You'll be punished for it. The king was very angry. So now Yehoshaphat says, any other prophets locally that we can call upon? And Achav says, I don't want to call him because he never tells me what I want to hear.
Why didn't Yehoshaphat offer up the Yom Tumah?
He didn't offer up the Urim V'Tumim. It's a good question. I don't know why he didn't just say, we'll bring you the Urim V'Tumim from Yerushalayim, but he didn't. He said, let's get a prophet from here. Actually, the truth is, when he originally said, let's ask Hashem, right? He wanted to know, is there no prophet here? It sounds like Yehoshaphat knew that. I don't want to be the one to say no, but clearly when you call the Navi Hashem, Michael ben Yimla, he's going to tell you not to go. But Achav quickly said, okay, oh, you want prophets? I have 400 of them on my payroll. Come. They come in to four. I imagine them like Lahavdil on the stands, like you see at of a choir in a Lahavdil, you know what I'm saying, at a concert or something, and they're in 4 rows stadium seating, but they're not sitting down, they're standing, wearing the canonicals or something, just to complete the picture. And they all say, you should go to war, you will win, and then sort of singing it. And Yehoshaphat turns to Achav and says, anybody else? I don't want to bring him in. I don't like him. He doesn't like me. He doesn't tell me what I want to hear, that comes out of his mouth. So he admits, I hate him. Now, also, I mean, the king hates him. It's his personal animus is what's going to govern how he's going to ask Hashem. Apparently. Okay. So now what happens? Yehoshaphat actually says to him, no, don't speak like that. It's not a good way to speak. Right? You shouldn't have done that. Now, what's interesting is this was Lashon Hara, no? In a certain way. But when you look in a certain way, I mean, he wasn't saying something bad about, but he said, I don't like him because he doesn't tell me what I want to hear. Look at source here on page 1, right under the map.
Also isn't the personality of a guy who's been letting himself get whipped 3 times a day and eating later and everything.
Right.
And
So right. So
there's
there's a certain right. So it is a question on the Yalkut Shimoni. Like, seriously, he was so into tshuva, or maybe he was into tshuva because Eliyahu Hanavi read him the riot act about what happened with Navot, and there he thought, I'm guilty. But the other Navi, Michael ben Yimla, who told me I would be punished for having granted the king of Aram pardon, clemency, he was not. I'm not listening to that one. Eliyahu, he knew he couldn't tussle with, because Eliyahu was the one on Har Carmel who had caused Achav to have already a pang of tshuva back in chapter 18.
Right.
And you'll say, but there's one God. So what do you mean this Navi and that Navi? Like, right? Lahavdal Fe'avdalot. I'm not accusing anybody over here, but you ever go to the doctor? The doctor tells him you don't like to hear what he say. I want a second opinion. You should, because the doctor is not infallible. You can make a mistake. Yeah. But in the end, isn't there one truth? There's one truth, but who's telling it to me, and how are they going to convey it? And maybe Eliyahu superseded Michael ben Yimla. So what are you bringing back that guy? We have a personal, we have, I think my children today would say we have beef. It's the expression today. If you're angry with somebody, that's the expression people use. So the young folks. So look at Aviyakar Rabbah. It points out Rabbi Yossi Mimil Chaya of Rabbi Yeshua the Sichnim B'Shem Rabbi Levi Amru Matzina Tokonot Tinokot B'Mei David Ashol Tamu Tam Chet Hayodin Lidrosh Rat Torah Memtet Panim Tamei Memtet Panim Tahor. The kids in school, in day school already, were so smart and so learned in the days of David HaMelech that they could figure out any question that came up. They could figure out 49 facets to be saying something was pure, or 49 facets saying it's impure, meaning they knew how to make great arguments. And David would daven for them and protect them, etc. Go to the highlighted line just for want of time. But they would go out to war and they would fall in battle. They had snitches among them. They had people who spoke Lashon Hara, which on a certain level means spiritually they gossiped amongst themselves, and on a very literal level, they were informants, and it got to the enemy. They would fall in battle. Fast forward. Same medrash. Aval dorosh shel Achav kulan ovdei avodat kochavim hayu v'al yidei shloher behen dei la torin hayu yotzim l'cham v'notzchin. The fact that they didn't have snitches in the days of Achav, even though they were all idolaters, but they held together, they won. Hushovadya amar le'Eliyahu halahu gad laduni v'chalkem v'chal keleim lechem v'mayim im lechem lamamayim el malam b'shahayu amayim kasim lo lahavi yotim lechem v'Eliyahu machriz v'arakam v'omer v'notati navi al shet l'Hashem b'vadi v'ama yad l'farsame malka. Everybody knew that even though it was very challenging and they were hunting down the various Nevi'im. In those days, the actual Nevi'im, the real Nevi'im, so they could put false prophets in their places, and Ovadia was hiding them in caves, and the whole thing was very hard to bring them the bread and the water. The fact is, people knew, and they didn't snitch. They didn't tell the king where the actual Nevi'im were, where Eliyahu Navi was. that stood in in the favor of that generation of people. But now, Achav, even though, and again, he's bringing together Yehoshaphat, they're going to fight, they're going to battle, they're going to succeed, right, against the common enemy. Yehoshaphat says, we have to ask, the authority of the day, and that's asking a Navi. 400 prophesy in one direction. Yeah, was there anybody else? I don't want to bring him here. Look at verse 9, Pasuk Tet, in page 438. Okay. Just to look at the tone, and you could say the speed of how things happen. So this underling is called forward by Achav. Bring him here quickly. It would hasten him here, meaning I'm summoning him. I'm in charge. Mubashim begadim begoren petach shar shomron v'chol nevim nabim lifnehem. In other words, the two kings are sitting each on a throne next to each other. They're in an area, threshing floor in the vicinity of Shomron probably means it's an open area. And the prophets are in front of them prophesying. And one among them, Vayaslo Tzidkiah ben Kenana Karnei Barzel. Vayomer ko amar Hashem be'ela tenagach et aram ad kalotam. He says, so says God, he quotes in the name of Hashem, with these iron, right? Karnei Barzel, iron horns, not Charvot Barzel, but Karnei Barzel. Iron horns, you will gore Aram until you destroy them. Hashem biyad hamelach. And they're repeating again. God will place, right? That you'll be successful. God will place the Arameans into your hand. Verse 13, buckle your seatbelts. It's about to be very, very, very strange. Very strange. Very strange. V'hamalach asher alach likro michayhu diber elav lemor hinei na divrei hanaviim pe'echad tov el hamelach yehina dvarcha kidvar achad mehem v'dibarta tov. So the emissary who came to give the word to Michaihu tells him they all spoke with one voice, the prophet. So when you arrive, here's your script. Here's what you're expected to say. You need to confirm what they said. That's what it tells them to do. Note that it calls him a malach. A malach can mean an emissary, could mean an angel. Mm-hmm. See what that means. But say what you're going to say. And it better be this. Accept the way of the majority. That's what they've said, and don't go against them. By the life, so it takes an oath, basically. By God, I am not going to say anything except what God tells me to say. I'm not making it up. The idea that someone came to tell him in the name of the king, come quickly and confirm what was already spoken, and you better say Tov. I'm not going to do that. Verse 15, bottom of the page. Notice he just calls him Michayu just like that. He calls him first name. What should we do? Should we cease and desist? Should we go? Yomer elav alei v'hatzlach. And what does he say? Go up. You'll be successful. God said it. Hashem will place him in your hand. Okay. But the king doesn't stop there. Yeah. Vayomer elav hamelach ad kama fe'amim manish mash bi echa asher lo tdaber elai rak emet b'shem Hashem. So the king presses him, maybe because of the way in which Michaihu said it. He suspects something's there. He knows Yehoshaphat sitting next to him in the chair. So what does he say to him? I've put you under oath that you should only speak the truth in the name of God. Yeah, Joanne, please.
Because he knows that Yehoshaphat doesn't. Which one doesn't like this?
Achav doesn't like Michaihu. Right. They had previous interactions where the prophet Michaihu told him bad things are going to happen to you, and he was very angry at him. At the end of chapter 20, he goes home, Achav, angry, pouting. Yehoshaphat is telling him something's weird here. 400 prophets are saying everything's going to be fine. Is there nobody else here? Because Yehoshaphat knows that there's another Navi. Oh yeah, there is, but I hate him. I don't want to deal with him. But I'll send for him. So that already before he goes in, he's told, these are your lines. This is what you should say. So in comes Michayu, and he says out loud, he answers, go up and be successful, and God will place it in the hand of the king. Meaning exactly what the 400 prophets said. A minute after Michayu said to the emissary, by the life of God, I'm only going to speak the truth that God tells me to speak. You with me? So Achav says to him, as if in a moment of, you could say, theater, I put you under oath. Haven't I put you under oath before, telling you so many times? I've told you before, don't lie to me. Tell me the truth. Right? Meaning, tell it to me again. Yehoshaphat sitting here. Let's hear it again. Verse 17. Vayomer ra'iti et kol Yisrael nefotzim el haharim katzon asher ein lem ru'eh. Vayomer Hashem lo adonim la'ela yashuvu ish leveito v'shalom. I'll tell you what I see. I see the Jewish people scattered on all those hills, like sheep that have no king and no shepherd. And God says they have no master. They should each go home. Go home, like that's it. It's over. I mean, wow. So a second ago, you just told me what I want to hear. Now I ask you a second time, you tell me what I don't want to hear. So what's happening? Lo itnabe alai tov ki imra. So he turns over looks over at Yehoshaphat and he says, didn't I tell you that he's not going to give me good news, only the bad news? That's, so look at that, right? Vayomer lachein shma dvar Hashem. Ra'iti et Hashem. So now Michayu now continues to speak. You should hear the word of Hashem. Ra'iti et Hashem. This is Michayu says, I saw God. Yoshev al kis'o. He's sitting on his throne. V'chotz v'hashamayim omed alav mimino u'mismolo. I see that he has to the right and to the left the whole host, all the Melachim, the whole celestial retinue. Vayomer Hashem. God says out loud, Mi yafateh et achav v'yal v'yipol b'ramot Gilad. Vayomer zebecho v'zeh omer becho. So God, as it were, asks, it's very strange. But Michayu is explaining to Achav, I saw Hashem on his throne in his courtroom. I gave it away. And he's asking, who will deceive Achav so that he will go up to Ramot Gilad and be killed in battle? And they're looking around. Yeah. One said on one side they're speaking, on the other side they're speaking. There's like a tumult that God has asked for this. Vayetze haruach, and so the spirit came out. Vayamod lifnei Hashem, stood before God. Vayomer ani afatenu, I will seduce him. I will cajole him and convince him that he should go out to battle. Vayomer Hashem elav bama. How will you do this? Hashem asks the soul, this spirit. Vayomer eitzei v'hayiti ruach sheker b'fi kol nevi'av. I will go out and I will be a lying spirit, a false spirit in the mouths of all of these prophets. Vayomer, Hashem says tefateh v'gam tuchal, you'll seduce him and you'll be successful. Tzei v'asechein, go out and do it, make it happen. Ve'ata hinei natan Hashem ruach sheker b'fi kol nevi'acha ela v'Hashem diber alecha ra'ah. Michael says, and so you see, God has put a false spirit in the mouths of all of these prophets who speak here, and therefore they're speaking in the name of God. But I'm here to tell you that it's all wrong, that the prophets are not telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. You're not going to survive the battle. Now watch what happens next. You have two kings sitting on thrones. You have 400 prophets ranked in rows. You have all sorts of people in the court. Vayigash Tzidkiyahu ben Kenania, Vayaket Michayu al Alechi. Vayomer Eze Avar Ruach Hashem Me'iti Ledaber Otach. Tzidkiyahu ben Kenania, the one who had just made the Karnei Barzel, the horns, smacks him across the face in front of everybody. I'm sure he didn't give him like this. Yeah? It wasn't like the Zaidi giving the potch, Smacked him upside the head in front of everybody and said, how dare you? I'm the prophet. Prophet and prophet, they're going after each other. They're having a spat in front of everybody. And he smacks him across the face. So what are you talking about? What spirit of God left me and went to you? Vayomer Michayu, hincharo evayomahu, asher tavo cheder becheder lehechaveh. You'll see. You'll be going into the internal rooms. You'll be going into the safe room of the safe room to go hide because of what's about to happen. V'omer Melech Yisrael, kach et Michayu v'hashivehu el Amon sar ha'ir leYoash ben Hamelach. Basically, take him and give him over to the magistrates, the people who run things in the town, and to my son. V'amarta ko amar Hamelach, Simu et ze beit hakele. V'achiluhu lachem lachatz u'mayim lachatz ad bo'i v'shalom. Put him in prison, feed him a starvation diet until I come back from the war. Apparently being a prophet is a very challenging job. Michael says, if you come back peacefully from the war, then God never spoke. To me, at least. And he says, listen, all you nations, meaning all the people who are here, Malchut Yisrael and Malchut Yehuda, and anybody else who's there. So just to sum up, he's in jail. The prophet has gone to jail. He was imprisoned by the king for his intemperate words, or false words, clearly, because 400 verses 1, how could it be right? Right? And he's explaining why the 400 prophets as they did, and including this fellow with the special horns, the whole thing is made up. But worse than made up. It's all from God. It's to seduce you to go to war. So you would imagine, since he pulled the curtain back and he said, this whole thing is a ruse and you're really going to die on the battlefield, you would imagine Achav would have said, I better not go. What Achav say? You're the liar, because I have the vast majority in my court. And he put him in prison, and he held him in abeyance. By the way, the mayim and the lechem lachatz means starvation diet, rations till they come back. So they go up to Ramot Gilad. Vayomer Melech Yisrael Yehoshaphat, hitchapes v'avov ha'milchama, v'atal vash begadecha, v'yitchapes Melech Yisrael v'avov ha'milchama. So he tells the king Yehoshaphat, as they're going out to the war, what does he tell him? I'm going to wear a disguise. You go as a king. I'm wearing a disguise. Why are you wearing a disguise? I don't get killed in battle. I can't go as myself because I'm worried that really the prophecy of Michael, even though of course it's not true, maybe it's true. So just in case, I'm going to outwit, outsmart, outfox the whole prophecy because I'm not wearing the right clothes, right? Okay, by the by, I have a lot to say about this in another vein, but I've said it before. The Bard took tons of material. He downloaded it wholesale and he grafted it and made plays out of it, okay? But it's all in the Tanakh. It's clearly in the Tanakh. He's going out in a battle, and you're going to dress in your battle, right? Right? So he will not be killed by one of woman born. Again, we're back to Shakespearean tragedy. So he goes out to the war. The king of Aram, who was recently 3 years ago granted a pardon in his life by the king of Israel. What does he say to his people who are in charge of the chariots? He has 32 divisions. He tells them, division heads, you have one target, and everything else will fall like a house of cards. Just kill the king of Israel. By the by, Yehoshaphat's dressed as a king. So everyone thinks that he's the king of Israel. He's the king of Yehuda. Right? So Yehoshaphat cries out because they're chasing him. They think he's the Melech Yisrael. It's a case of mistaken identity. By the way, how do they know what he looks like? Whether they have a photograph of him? They think not only do they know him before, they were there because they were defeated and were in the presence of King Achav when he granted pardon. Now they see some other guys, the king. Wait, who's this? We never heard that the king died and it's his son. So who's this? It's another king. Yeah. The Ish, we don't know his name, an Ish, Stam, a guy in the army, Aramean army, Mashach Bakeshet Lutumo Vayaket Melech Yisrael Ben Hadvakim, Uvena Ashiryan. Vayomer L'Rakabo Hafoch Yadcha Votzieni Min Amachne Ki Leti. So, not realizing what he was doing, an Aramean soldier fired an arrow at a regular a soldier. Maybe it was, the head of a brigade or something, because he was riding a chariot, and the arrow went just at the point where the armor. There's a seam in the armor. Armor goes in the front. Armor goes in the back. Just underneath, through it, so it pierced the body armor. Just like today, where there's armor, and they're wearing the ephodim. They had also. Sad, but it went through. But he was still able to speak. Clearly, he's losing blood, a lot of blood. So he says to the person of the chariot, take me out of here, for I have fallen ill. He doesn't say, I'm going to die. He just, right? But he doesn't want to demoralize everybody. He's not dressed as the king anyway. So he went toward the battle, even though he was leaving. They propped him up in the chariot He was still standing, leaning on the chariot, even though he's hemorrhaging. And eventually he died. At the end of the day, he died. It was his last day as the king. He didn't want to be seen as literally just collapsing, so he propped himself up and he kept going. We have Lahavdol Fe'avdol, Alef Avdol, but Lahavdol, we have many such examples of people who, even though they were hemorrhaging blood, just in the last 14 months, they kept going. They were very worried that if they would leave, they would demoralize the people who were under their charge among the Chayalim. They kept going. So, but he died. But he had so much blood that he had hemorrhaged that it went into the chariot. It filled up the chariot, inside the cavity. Vayavor harina b'machane kivo hashemesh. They started wailing as the sun was setting. Lemor ish el irov ish el arzo. Soldiers, go home. We lost. Our king is dead. Vayamot hamelach vayavo shomron. Vayigbrod hamelach b'shomron. They buried him in Shomron. Vayishtof et harechav al brechat Shomron. And they washed out the chariot there at the pool of Shomron. Vayaloko aklavim et damo vazonot rachatzu kidvar Hashem asher diber. Remember Eliyahu Hanavi, what he had said? The dogs are gonna lap up your blood. The dogs lapped up the blood. Yeah. The harlots washing themselves also has a whole connotation about the idea of being selling out to the highest bidder and being about money and betraying yourself, etc. So the whole thing. V'yeter divrei achav v'chol asher asab uveit Hashem asher bana v'chol ha'arim asher bana Elohim ketuvim al sefer divrei hayamim u'malchei Yisrael v'yishkav achav im avutav v'yimloch Achaziyahu b'no tachtav. So it was. He reigned and he died, and that was it. That's the end of the story of Achav. Izebel is not in the picture because she does not go out to war. She will be again in a later story because she will also meet an end. But I don't want to give it away. I have to come back for another series. If you're interested in what happens to Izebel, let's see a few minutes remaining. We're not going to get through our 7 pages or 6 pages that remain, but at least we'll see a little bit here. We have to try to understand there's a big theological problem that Chazal are confronting, and it's the problem of how could this be that a prophet is saying something that never actually happened and saying it in the name of Hashem, and it's not a false prophet apparently, or it is a false prophet, and Michaiah says, oh yeah, what was said before, that was all fake. Well, what do you mean? They prophesied apparently in the name of God. They used God's name. They weren't the prophets of Baal anymore. So this is the Gemara's question, Sanhedrin Peitet Amid Aleph. Hamit Nabe Mashalo Shama. Worthy of being put to death is someone who prophesied something they didn't actually hear. Kigon Tzidkiya ben Kenania. Dichtiv Vayaslo Tzidkiya ben Kenania Karne Barzel. My Havalei Lemevad. What was this? What was this about? Yeah. What should he have done? Of course, that's what he had to do. That's what Tzidkiya ben Kenania. That's when he slaps him across the face because how dare you claim the name of Hashem? I am a Navi, a real Navi, and but he was led astray. He was led astray. Right? Ruach Navot Ata'ate. The spirit of Navot was what threw him off. Dichtiv Yom Hashem mi yafater achav vayal vayipol b'ramat Gilad vayetze ha ruach vayamod lifnei Hashem vayomer ani yafatenu vayomer v'chulei v'chulei tifateh v'gam tuchal tzei v'asechen. Now we learned that when Michaiah was describing the celestial retinue and a spirit came out, the spirit was the neshama of Navot, standing before the heavenly court. Amar Rav Yehuda might say, what does say mean? Go out. Say mechitzati. God told him, go out from being in my presence, essentially. My ruach. What do you mean the spirit? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, rucho shenavot Yisraeli. Right? Again, see under, Elizabethan England, a playwright taking exactly this motif from this story. So, Havle Lameidak, to Rabbi Yitzchak. The problem with Tzidkiya ben Kenania, who shows up with the iron horns to make his point, and by the way, they were very often using dramatic expressions, you could say almost theatrics, to make their point. There are so many examples of this in the Tanakh, where they would create an image and then they would live by the image to show what was about to happen to them. Yeshaya does it. Yechezkel does it. A lot of Nevi'im do. Hosea, a lot of them have to do like dramatic things, Yirmiyahu, to show what's going to happen.
Because they didn't think that people were going to listen.
That's how you remember. People always remember the story in the drasha, right? That's what they remember. So you're going to give the story. What's going to happen is tell the story, an image. literally is showing them something.
Pictures with the guy.
Yeah, pictures worth 1,000 right. So but it was a theatrical performance practically. But he should have figured it out. Why? Like Rabbi Yitzchak taught. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Signon echad oleh lekama neviim. There is one way that all Nevi'im are going to hear something. The ancient Nevi'im mitnab'in b'signon echad. It's true there's one message because it came from Hashem. But every Navi will prophesy with a different style. And that was the tip-off for Yehoshaphat, something was wrong because all 400 spoke with one voice, with the exact same language. Something's wrong. In fact, when you look through Navi, you will find that two Nevi'im will say the same kind of idea, but it's a different language. Sometimes with different imagery, because the way they received it has to do with the receiver, right? And there are examples here. Ovadia Amar, Zidon Libcha Hishiacha, Yirmiyah Amar. Right, there's another part. I clipped out the rest of the Gemara. Okay, the Gemara goes on to say, there are all these different things. It's on the bottom. It's after the English. That's what happened. It got messed up, right? Tiflat satcha, hesiotcha, zadon libcha, vanmid ka'amre kulu kehadade, shmamina lo kulum ka'amre. If everyone could say the exact same words, something was crazy. Something was not right. Dilma lo hava yada le lahad Rabbi Yitzchak. Maybe they didn't know about the Rabbi Yitzchak's teaching. He wasn't even alive yet, Rabbi Yitzchak. So this memra was known in Torah Baal Peh. How come no one knew it? Right? So maybe they didn't know. No, Yehoshaphat have a hatam. But Yehoshaphat was right there, and he told them. La Hashem od, is there no other prophet unto God? Amar le ha'ika kohane. You look out for this 400 prophets here. So Amar le, so Yehoshaphat said to him, Kach mechublanu beit avi abba. Signon echad ola l'kam neviim, ve'ein shnei neviim mitnabim signon echad. Before Rabbi Yitzchak taught it, he was after all a sage already of the Talmud. Yehoshaphat is saying, my elder Zeta, meaning David HaMelech, I have it already, tradition from the Beis Din of David HaMelech, two prophets cannot use the same language. Something's fishy. It doesn't work. Bring me someone else. Who else is there? Well, not him, because he never says it the right way. I never get from Michaiah what I want. And then this fellow Kenania stood up, Tzidkiah ben Kenania, and he said, with the horns of iron. But then we hear the backstory, and initially, by the Michaiah also plays along. Right? You want me to say it? Fine, I'll say it. Okay. God, bracha v'atzlacha. Hashem says yishtav v'atzlacha. But that's how Achav knows I can't actually trust this, because something's fishy here. Sort of like he catches on. He's also saying exactly the same language. But the point was, Michaiah at the beginning just parroting it. By the way, he operates with great danger. Notice, aren't you waiting for like a pillar of fire to come down and consume Achav and his people? No, he puts the prophet in jail. Nothing miraculous happened. Nothing magical. Nothing. He's just like that. Yeah. Yeah.
He got to the Nevi'im and got them to, to me, this is a setup that God set this whole thing up, correct?
Correct.
That.
Why? Why would God set him up to fail?
No, I think but he set up the Nevi'im to believe.
Yeah.
That
they were saying the right thing. Right. And then they were dead wrong. Literally.
So he did this to get to Achav?
He did this to get to Achav. He did this to get to Achav in order to give Achav his punishment. To give him his punishment. You could say. The whole imagery that there's a court and God is the judge of the court. And there are people coming forward and a lying spirit, Ruach Sheker, comes forward. How did Navot get killed? National injustice. Court. You want to play with injustice in the court? How do you feel when now you heard false testimony and you don't even know what to believe, but you're gonna, right? But like the tragic figure that Achav is, I don't mean in a sympathetic way, he runs to the battlefield. We don't have time to see any of these other sources, but just turn to page 6. If we see one other source, we'll see the Radak. This is what the Radak explains. Okay, there's a lot more here about what is this about and what does it represent, and we'll have to see it. Another time. We won't have a shir the next week, but I think in 2 weeks we'll be back, and I'll do another series. You have no obligation to come back if you enjoyed this and finished. Okay, but you find out that who's higher than my court, says Achav. God's court is higher. You want to see corruption in a court? It could be corruption in the divine court. You know who the agent of the corruption is going to be, actually? Navot Israeli. Don't think that you got rid of him, so to speak, yeah? If you just read these things that God said who will seduce Achav, that's a great source of consternation if you understand them, if you understand what the meaning is here. Right? The reason why this was happening is because Achav was worthy of being put to death. He did tshuva, but that didn't mean he wasn't going to personally be punished at all. Lo sheba la'achat mehem ruach nevuah ela ha'arat ruach v'chafetz l'daber el achav dvarim elu vehu ma she'amar michayu hinei natan Hashem ruach sheker b'fi chol neviyacha ela ve'Hashem diber elacha ra'ah v'shar kol advarim kimo vayomer zeh omer b'cho v'zer b'cho. There's a whole tumult. The angels are all talking. Vayetze ruach vayomer etzei v'hayiti ruach sheker. Underlined line, page 6. If for this alone you came, you understand things in a deeper way. Says the Radak, Rav David Kimchi, Kol Eile, this whole story, Divrei Melitza Haim, the whole thing is allegorical. That's what Michayu is doing. Amram Michayu derech hatzaat dvarim. Michayu is saying it as in a suggestive way. This is what you can imagine must have happened, sire. Lo shira'a Michayu dvarim elev lo sham'am. It's not that he actually had a prophecy, and in his prophecy there's a court, and God is speaking with angels and this whole thing. It's Michayu. This is the interpretive part. What God really said is, Achav, you're going to die on the battlefield. What Michayu is saying, why don't you imagine it like this? It's a court, and God decided that who's the someone who will be your prosecutorial angel who's bringing you down? When you are shot through with the arrow, who will you think about? Navot HaIsraeli, who you killed. Because actual prophecy, literally prophecy, can only be true. Yeah. Right? Al Yadi. The Ana Matzina Lateute Uluuvda Yate min Alma v'Amar Le Hashem Bameh At Yachil v'Amar Epuk ve'Eya Ruach Shikra B'Tzidkiya Bar Kenanya v'Shar Neviaya Shikra delay. So in other words, and it goes on. We're out of time, but basically, Navot, so to speak, comes up with the idea: I will seduce Achav to go out. God says, "How will you do it?" And Navot says, "I'm going to go out and I'm going to entice all these people. Tzidkiya ben Kenan is going to think it's from you. The Nevi'im will think it's from you, right?" The Gemara Masachet Shabbat actually says that Navot's spirit, so to speak, was punished for this. And God allowed him to do this, but the fact that he was the agent that was prosecuting Achav and he had some hand in it also was not appropriate on his part. The point here is that in the end, there's not cosmic justice, there's divine justice. And Achav brings about his own demise because he doesn't know who to listen to, but he's not really actually willing to listen to the real Navi anymore. He's so bamboozled about what is the truth. He himself has made it so enmeshed with lies upon lies upon lies. He doesn't know what to do, and it ends with his tragic end. But his end, where the national injustice catches up with him, he's the personification of the nation in the persona of the king, and he's felled on the battlefield. That's not the end of the story, but it's the end of our time together for the series on the national injustice, the story of the last days of King Achav. Join me next series, and we'll learn about some other issues in the politics of our people many generations ago, and we'll see what lessons we can tease out from that as well. Adkan.